In a summer that has already brought us record temperatures across the country, alarmingly warm ocean conditions in different parts of the globe, wildfire smoke from Canada literally spreading across the entire northeast United States at different points in time and continuing to occur in some cases, we are now adding floods to the mix. Recently in New England, specifically in the state of Vermont, they are dealing with horrific flooding that we haven't seen since Hurricane Irene back in 2011. This is actually looking like it's going to be worse, unfortunately. We can go ahead and show some of these images. This is drone footage from the capital of Vermont, the city of Montpelier. It is shocking. I'm someone, I've spent a lot of time in this area. I went to college in Vermont. That first image there that you saw was the state capitol. Obviously flooded streets here all throughout. This is along the Winooski River. The Winooski River is currently flooding way above the flood stage, obviously. We'll get into the specifics here, but I just wanted to show some visuals of this because it is obviously alarming. And unfortunately, it could potentially get worse. We can go ahead and pull up the tweet from Jim Cantori of the Weather Channel. He actually went to the same college as I in Vermont, not far from here, formerly Linden State College. Then Northern Vermont University, now Vermont State University. That's nothing to do with this, but him saying the capital of Vermont is cut off this morning with the threat of higher water coming from the Wrightsville Dam should it overflow. So this is all without this other dam overflowing. This is all coming down kind of the main branch of the Winooski River. Unfortunately, the Wrightsville Reservoir, which sits above Montpelier, is currently looking something like this. That is the top of the reservoir right there, only 1 foot from going over. If it were to go over, this spillway right here, this area will go and add additional water to the city of Montpelier that already looks like those images that you just saw. So while the rain has slowed down, there is still some drainage happening, and there is a risk of this potentially getting worse in the city of Montpelier. There are other parts of the state of Vermont that are also dealing with this, though. This is not an isolated spot, just like it was not isolated back during Hurricane Irene. We can continue to look at a couple of these images. These are railroad tracks in Ludlow, Vermont. You can see that the entire embankment here has just washed out. I mean, entirely gone. The tweet here saying, we cover a lot of disaster on the Weather Channel, but we've never seen this. Railroad tracks suspended 100 plus feet in the air after the earth beneath them washed away in Ludlow, Vermont. 8 inches of rain fell there in the small town of 800. Again, unprecedented. This is not normal, especially for this time of year. Okay, Hurricane Irene happened during hurricane season in the fall. We're going to get into some of those numbers in a second because a couple people are saying this has nothing to do with climate change. This has happened before, yada, yada, yada. This has absolutely not happened in the middle of July. It is not. This is not normal. There is nothing normal about this. I just want to highlight that a little bit here. We're going to get into the specifics in a second. Just a couple other visuals here, though, just so you can see the full picture of how widespread this is. This is in Claremont, Vermont, near Ludlow, Okemo. If any of you are skiers, you'll be familiar with Okemo in the Northeast. I mean, this is crazy for me. Like, I've driven down some of these streets before, and it's shocking. It's shocking to look at that. Hopefully, I've got a lot of friends in Vermont, in New Hampshire. In general, hopefully people are faring okay. But as we know, back in 2011, when this happened in Irene, these are a lot of small towns and villages connected by not that many roads. Many of those roads right now are going to be impassable. Many of these roads are going to be, fully washed out. And it's going to be extremely difficult for first responders to be able to get to folks. We saw this morning Governor Sununu in New Hampshire sending swiftwater rescue teams from New Hampshire over to help in Vermont. It seems like New Hampshire fared a little bit better, although I would be surprised if there was no flooding there, but definitely not to this extent. But many of these towns are unfortunately going to be cut off. It's very much the kind of early stages of this. We'll see how it fares and if resources are getting to people, if people were to be able to get out in time. There was obviously some warning that this was coming, but I don't think anyone expected images like we just saw from Montpelier to be what is actually happening at this stage of the game here. Let's move on here now to some of the actual, graphics of how high the water is. We've got this tweet from Anthony Farnell. Montpelier, Vermont experiencing the worst flooding since 1927, and there is still potential for this to get worse. The Wrightsville Dam, which we just talked about, just a couple feet from reaching capacity, causing the use of that spillway to be used for the first time ever. And again, since that tweet, it is now up to basically just a foot or two. These are the actual observed water levels, and specifically, we'll look at this one here where it shows the action level, minor, moderate, and major flooding. Obviously, this is now into the major flooding, showing 526.07 feet, a couple feet over the major flood level. But when we even look at this historically, it's not great. It does not look good. They allow you to play with some of the information from the last 2 decades or so. So I did that and to kind of granularly look, how often does this happen, and where does it normally happen during the year? Is it something that's happening in the spring when snow melt is happening, and in the fall when a hurricane might come through? And you're gonna have to take my word for it a little bit, because on this graphic I can't show you exactly. But every single one of the spikes that you see on the graphic are either in the springtime during snowmelt, or they are during the fall. Today's date goes above 20 on this, so it's above everything else since 2007, which is on this graph. And let's take a little bit of a further back look. We've got the top 5 crests, historic crests of the river. The Winooski River here is just one example. There are other rivers that this is also happening to. The highest being back in 1927, where the crest was at 27 feet. We are just shy of that 1927 record. So this is officially the largest flood for the Winooski River since 1927. This flood in 1927 happening during hurricane season. Makes a bit more sense. When you go back and you look through some of these other historic records and crests, number one, besides that 27-foot figure, this new one blows all the others out of the water. Below 27 feet, the number 2 is 19.05 feet. We're currently sitting at about 22 feet here, which is obviously significantly higher than everything else that is shown on this crest list, especially given the time of year. I want to keep stressing that. It is normal in the springtime for rivers in Vermont and New Hampshire and Maine to flood over. My dad used to live on the Connecticut River on the New Hampshire state line, and every year he'd be looking at these graphs and saying, ugh, how close is it going to be? You'd set the sump pumps up in the basement, get ready for it. This is a 100-year flood levels. These are things that don't happen very often, and it has been almost 100 years since the last one. When you look at all of the data, all the way back to as far as, I believe this goes back to 1907, there are only 2 instances of floods making the historic crest list, meaning the top 86 crests, highest levels the river has ever been. There are only 2 in the months of June or July on the entire list. Both of them are essentially almost half of the river height that they are today. I just want to stress that because this is not normal for the middle of summer. Ludlow, Vermont, 8 inches of rain in the middle of the summer. This is not normal. Clearly, climate change is affecting things here. We're going to be seeing more and more of this. Like I started this video off with, we're seeing record high temperatures being broken in different parts of the country for the time of the year. We're seeing big forest fires in eastern Canada, which is absolutely not normal. We've been seeing flooding in parts of Europe that they're not used to, in Italy and in Spain in particular. We're now seeing this in the state of Vermont in the middle of the summertime. It is not normal. We should not start to get into the mindset that it is normal. It shouldn't ever start to feel normal, but the unfortunate reality is it seems like more of this is coming. We're moving way too late as far as doing anything about it. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do anything about it. It means we need to get creative and start doing it now. But yeah, for the time being, hoping that the folks in Vermont are doing okay. Hoping that, first responders are able to get in safely, because this is clearly a dangerous situation that needs to be taken seriously. I'm going to keep an eye on this. I'm going to try to talk with some folks on the ground as well. I do know folks who live in the area, not right in Montpelier, but one town over. So I'm going to try to make some contact with folks and see how the response is going. So stay tuned for an update on some of this. Please, if this is your first time seeing us, consider hitting the subscribe button down below. It helps a lot. You can also follow me on Twitter at LewisD217. Thank you all so much. Have a good day.